If I told you that a single prayer, spoken from your heart for just 60 seconds, could unlock the flow of heaven's provision in 24 hours, would you dare to pray it? Beloved, if I told you that 1 minute, just 60 seconds, could change your financial atmosphere, would you believe it? Some of you have prayed for years, yet nothing seemed to move. But what if I told you the issue was not time, it was focus? When a heart aligns perfectly with the will of heaven, even for 1 minute, the entire spiritual economy shifts. You see, heaven doesn't count minutes, it measures faith. And when faith speaks, heaven answers immediately. There is a divine law of expectation. When you expect nothing, you receive nothing. But when you stand before God expecting supply, not begging, not doubting, but expecting, then the doors of provision swing open. Expectation is the womb of manifestation. So I challenge you for 60 seconds, enter your secret chamber, not before men, not for show, but before your Father who sees in secret. Whisper this prayer from your spirit, not from your lips. Father, I thank you that every need in my life is already met in Christ. I receive divine provision, divine favor, and divine ideas now. I walk in the abundance of heaven, and I release every worry into your hands. Don't tell anyone what you prayed. Keep it in the secret place. Because hidden prayers birth visible blessings. When your Father hears that whisper of faith, He begins to move, not tomorrow, not next month, but within hours. Now listen carefully, money is not evil, it is a servant. When your spirit commands it through faith, it begins to flow toward purpose. God is not preparing the blessing, He is preparing you to hold it. So when you pray this 60-second prayer, pray with the heart that knows. The source is not your job, not your business, not even the person you expect. The source is God Himself, and He can deliver through channels you never imagined. In 24 hours, some of you will see unexpected provision. A debt cancelled, a favor granted, a door opened, because faith spoken with authority moves heaven into motion. Now lift your hands and whisper, Lord, make me a vessel of your abundance. I will use what you send for your glory. And as you pray this, feel the peace of heaven descend. That peace is the signal that the transaction has already taken place. The angels are already in motion. The answer is already dispatched. The power of a focused moment in prayer is one of the most underestimated forces in the life of a believer. Many think that God measures the depth of our devotion by the length of our words or the duration of our prayers. But heaven operates by a very different principle. Heaven listens not to time but to faith. In the unseen world, time has no meaning. 1 second of faith-filled speech carries more weight than 1,000 hours of empty repetition. A focused moment in prayer is like a spark that ignites the atmosphere of the supernatural. When your heart and your words align with the will of God, the entire spiritual order bends toward your voice. There are times when people spend long hours praying, yet their hearts are scattered. They pray while their minds are occupied with worry, doubt, and fear. Their lips speak words, but their spirits are silent. That kind of prayer may sound spiritual, but it lacks the divine energy that attracts the response of heaven. The secret of power in prayer lies not in how long you speak, but in how present you are in that moment. The most powerful prayers are those where the human soul is fully awake, completely surrendered, and singularly focused on God's presence. That kind of focus pulls heaven into the now. Think of the widow who came before the unjust judge. She did not stop because of rejection or delay. Her persistence was not rooted in time, it was rooted in faith. In a single declaration, she was saying, I will not be denied. God does not resist those who are focused. He responds to them. In that focused moment, The energy of divine justice was released. Every person who has ever touched the miraculous understood this truth. It is not about how long you pray, it is about how alive your prayer is. When a believer prays with focus, the mind ceases to wander, the heart becomes still, and faith takes the throne. That stillness is not emptiness, it is the stillness of authority. It is the calm that comes when the Spirit knows it has entered the throne room of heaven. The atmosphere changes. The words spoken in that kind of focus carry weight. They penetrate through layers of resistance. They are not mere wishes but decrees. Focus transforms prayer from a request into a command spoken in alignment with divine law. Faith requires concentration. The enemy's greatest weapon is distraction. Distraction weakens faith because it divides attention. When the heart is divided, the power is diffused. But when the heart is united, when every thought, emotion, and desire point toward one purpose, then the prayer becomes a laser beam in the spirit. A focused prayer cuts through doubt, fear, and limitation. It pierces through confusion and goes directly to the heart of God. That is why Jesus often withdrew from the crowd. He understood that focus requires separation. He would go into the mountain alone, away from the noise, to commune with the Father. It was in those moments of solitude that miracles were born. Many believers think focus means intensity or loudness, but focus is not about emotional volume, it is about spiritual clarity. It is the moment when your inner world becomes silent enough for your spirit to hear the whisper of God. When that whisper comes, your prayer changes. It becomes precise, authoritative, and powerful. In that instant, you no longer beg, you declare. You no longer plead, you proclaim. Heaven hears such words differently because they are not born from desperation. They are born from revelation. Every miracle begins with a moment of focus. Before Elijah called fire from heaven, he repaired the altar, set everything in order, and then spoke one focused prayer: "Answer me, O Lord." The fire did not come because of a long recitation, but because the prophet's spirit was aligned with divine timing. His heart was undivided, his words were exact, and his focus unbroken. The heavens responded instantly. In that single moment, the realm of the unseen was opened, and the visible world was changed. The focused prayer is the meeting point of divine will and human faith. It is where the invisible becomes tangible. When your focus is pure, you don't need to repeat yourself 1,000 times. The moment you release that faith-filled word, it carries the creative force of heaven. God said, "Let there be light," and light appeared immediately. He didn't repeat it, he didn't argue with darkness, he simply declared it once with complete authority. That is the model of a focused prayer. It is short, but it carries eternal power because it is spoken in perfect confidence. A single minute of prayer can shift a lifetime if that minute is filled with real faith. That is why those who truly understand prayer never rushed to speak. They take time to quiet their souls, to bring their thoughts into order, to breathe in the presence of God. When they finally open their mouths, they speak as one who already knows the outcome. They are not guessing, they are declaring. Focus gives your words weight because it connects them to divine certainty. The prayer of a focused believer is not thrown into the air. It is directed straight into the throne room of grace. In moments of true focus, you become aware of the partnership between heaven and earth. You sense the nearness of God. You feel that what you are saying is not merely your own idea, but a reflection of His desire. In that awareness, confidence rises. You begin to see your situation, not from the ground looking up, but from heaven looking down. That shift in perspective is the essence of spiritual focus. It is when the believer stops reacting to circumstances and starts creating change through divine authority. Many miracles are delayed not because God said no, but because focus was never fully engaged. The heart wavered, the mind doubted. Words were spoken but not believed. Yet when focus is restored, results manifest quickly. The atmosphere around a focused believer becomes charged with divine energy. Angels move. Circumstances rearrange. Doors open. It is not because of emotional strength, but because of spiritual precision. Focus draws the line between prayer as a ritual and prayer as a transaction. A focused moment in prayer is like the striking of flint and steel. One spark and the fire begins. It is the concentration of faith, desire, and divine will into a single point of release. Heaven loves that kind of clarity. That is why the scripture says, "The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much." The word effective means focused, deliberate, intentional. It is prayer that knows what it wants and knows who it is speaking to. When you pray that way, time becomes irrelevant. Miracles do not require hours to form. They require one instant of divine agreement. Focus in prayer is not a gift reserved for a few. It is a discipline anyone can learn. It begins when you quiet the noise of your environment, still your mind, and fix your heart on the reality of God's presence. It is choosing to believe that in this very moment, heaven is listening. It is refusing to let your attention drift to what you lack or fear. It is holding your gaze on the promise until it becomes more real to you than the problem. That is focus, the power to stay anchored in truth even while the storm rages around you. When a person prays with focus, the atmosphere around them begins to shift. The room becomes charged with peace. The spirit senses alignment. You feel as if time has stopped. You know heaven has heard you. You know something is moving. You may not see it yet, but you sense it. Focus connects you to that invisible flow. It is the sacred bridge between the spoken word and the manifested result. The law of divine expectation is a principle that governs how heaven responds to human faith. Expectation is not wishful thinking. It is the confident anticipation that what God has spoken will come to pass. It is the atmosphere in which miracles are born. When a believer expects, heaven begins to move. Expectation is faith in motion, a living force that draws the invisible into the visible. It is like the magnetic pull of the Spirit that attracts divine supply. The universe is structured by spiritual laws, and one of the greatest among them is this: what you expect with faith becomes what you experience. When you expect something from God, you create a spiritual climate around you. That climate is filled with unseen energy, and everything in that atmosphere starts working in harmony with your expectation. If you expect defeat, you invite defeat. If you expect abundance, you attract abundance. The spirit world recognizes your expectation as a signal of alignment. God works in cooperation with your level of belief. Expectation is the invisible evidence that you trust His promise more than your circumstance. When your heart is anchored in expectation, your words, your emotions, and your thoughts all begin to harmonize with divine truth. Expectation is not passive. It is active faith. It waits, but it waits with movement. It stands still outwardly, but vibrates inwardly with confidence. It says, "I don't see it yet, but I know it's coming." The one who expects never lets doubt settle in the heart. Expectation looks at the impossible and says, "You are only a seed waiting to become a testimony." Expectation doesn't argue with logic. It simply believes that the power of God is greater than the calculation of men. When you expect, you are declaring that you trust God's nature more than the evidence of your senses. You are proclaiming that His word is final authority. In the law of divine expectation, heaven responds to readiness. God releases blessings only where the heart is prepared to receive. The vessels that overflow are the ones positioned under the fountain. Expectation positions you under that divine flow. It tells God, I am ready. When you expect healing, you prepare your body to receive it. When you expect provision, you prepare your hands to hold it. When you expect favor, you prepare your heart to walk in it. God is drawn to the posture of readiness. Expectation is that posture. It is an invisible stance of the soul that says, my miracle is already on the way. Every act of faith begins in expectation. Before Peter stepped out of the boat, he expected the water to hold him. Before the woman with the issue of blood touched the garment, she expected power to flow. Before Elijah called for rain, he expected the sky to respond. The moment expectation was activated, creation began to align itself with their faith. Expectation is not arrogance. It is agreement with divine will. It is saying, because he has spoken, I will see it. Heaven delights in that kind of confidence because it mirrors God's own nature. God never doubts his word. When you expect without wavering, you participate in his nature. A heart filled with expectation vibrates with creative power. It is impossible to expect and remain ordinary. Expectation gives birth to vision. It makes you act as if the answer is already in your hands. That is why true expectation changes behavior. When you expect rain, you carry an umbrella. When you expect blessing, you begin to give thanks before it arrives. When you expect opportunity, you start preparing your gifts. Your actions become the language of your faith. God sees that and responds. Expectation becomes prophecy in motion. Every time you act in accordance with what you expect, you send a message to heaven that says, I believe it enough to prepare for it. Expectation also creates alignment in the spiritual realm. Angels are attracted to faith because faith releases divine instruction. When you expect, your words gain authority. You begin to speak the language of heaven, and the hosts of heaven recognize your voice. They are ministers of those who believe, not of those who doubt. Expectation tells the angelic realm where to move. When you speak with expectation, your prayer carries command power. You are no longer begging, you are partnering with the divine order that has already been established in eternity. The opposite of expectation is worry. Worry is faith in the wrong direction. It is belief in the power of failure. When you expect disaster, you unconsciously prepare for it. You open the door for what you fear. But when you expect favor, you open the door for what you believe. That is why Scripture always joins faith with hope. Hope is expectation. Hope says something good is about to happen. Without hope, faith has no direction. Without expectation, power has no purpose. A heart without expectation becomes a desert, dry and lifeless. But a heart full of expectation becomes a garden where divine seeds take root quickly. Expectation has sound. It is heard in the tone of your voice, seen in your posture, and felt in your atmosphere. People who expect miracles carry a different vibration. They don't speak like the defeated. They walk with assurance. Their eyes shine with confidence because their spirit knows something unseen is about to manifest. Expectation changes the energy around you. It shifts your environment. It draws divine opportunities toward you because faith attracts what it expects. Even the natural world begins to cooperate with one who expects. Circumstances rearrange, people appear, resources come, not because of coincidence, but because expectation has magnetic force. There are believers who pray but do not expect, and there are those who expect even before they pray. The second group moves faster in the spirit. Expectation is what gives prayer wings. Prayer without expectation is sound without substance. Expectation fills prayer with direction. It tells heaven, this is what I believe for. This is what I am ready to receive. That is why when you pray, you must already see the answer. You must visualize it, feel it, speak as though it is already here. That is the language heaven understands. Expectation paints the picture of your faith so clearly that the unseen world recognizes it as finished. When Jesus walked the earth, every miracle he performed was preceded by expectation. The blind man expected to see. The centurion expected his servant to be healed. The woman expected deliverance. Each expectation created a bridge between their need and his power. Without expectation, even the Son of God could do little in certain places, because doubt blocks the flow of the miraculous. The law of divine expectation is unchanging. It does not bend for emotion. It only responds to certainty. You cannot fake it. Heaven knows when you truly expect. To live in expectation is to live with open hands and an open heart. It is to rise each morning saying, "Something good will find me today." That declaration is not fantasy, it is prophecy. When you live that way, you begin to notice divine patterns. Small coincidences reveal themselves as signs. You see the fingerprints of God on ordinary events. You begin to feel that unseen order working on your behalf. Your expectation tunes your spirit like a radio, allowing you to pick up the frequency of divine activity. Expectation also sustains you during silence. Even when there is no visible sign, expectation whispers, "It is coming." It keeps your heart alive when your circumstances seem still. It prevents spiritual fatigue. Expectation keeps your faith breathing. It is the inner assurance that delays are not denials. It turns waiting into worship. While others complain, those who expect keep praising. While others give up, they prepare for the arrival of the answer. Heaven recognizes that kind of endurance and accelerates the manifestation. Expectation is not dependent on emotion. You can feel nothing and still expect everything. It is a decision, not a feeling. It is the steady conviction that God cannot lie. When that conviction becomes your foundation, your life begins to move in rhythm with the supernatural. Every door that seemed closed begins to open. Every limitation begins to crumble. The spiritual realm always bends toward expectation because it recognizes the sound of divine agreement. When you expect, you are not hoping that something might happen. You are aligning with the truth that it already exists and is now on its way to you. The secret chamber principle is one of the greatest spiritual mysteries ever revealed to those who truly desire to walk in power with God. It is the understanding that what is done in secret before heaven is rewarded openly before men. There is a hidden realm where the most effective prayers are born, not in the noise of public declarations, but in the stillness of solitude. The secret chamber is not merely a physical place. It is a spiritual dimension where your soul meets the heart of God without distraction. It is a space where masks fall away, where motives are purified, and where true authority is forged in silence. In the secret place, you do not perform, you commune. You are not seeking attention, you are seeking alignment. The world rewards visibility, but heaven rewards secrecy. Every true movement of divine power begins in a secret place. Moses met God on the backside of the desert before he ever faced Pharaoh. Elijah heard the still small voice on Mount Horeb before he confronted the prophets of Baal. Jesus withdrew to lonely places before the dawn to speak with the Father, and out of those moments of hidden prayer came miracles that shook the earth. The secret chamber is where spiritual roots grow deep enough to sustain visible fruit. Without that hidden root, public success will always wither. Those who desire real manifestation must first learn to dwell in divine secrecy. When you pray in secret, your spirit enters a different frequency. The noise of the world fades away, and the voice of God becomes clear. In that sacred quiet, revelation flows. The heart becomes sensitive, and the soul begins to absorb divine instruction. It is not the place of loud cries or repetitive words, but the place of still knowing. The secret chamber teaches the art of listening. Many pray to be heard by God, but few stop long enough to hear Him. In that silence, you learn what to say and what to stop saying. You begin to sense the rhythm of the Spirit. Every instruction, every divine idea, every supernatural insight comes from that silent exchange. The reason God calls us to secrecy is not to hide us from the world, but to prepare us for it. In the secret place, He shapes character, purifies motives, and trains perception. He strips away the dependence on human recognition. The secret chamber is the crucible of humility, and humility is the soil in which divine authority grows. When you have been with God in secret, you no longer need to prove yourself in public. You move with quiet confidence, carrying the fragrance of His presence. Others can sense that something eternal rests upon you, even if they cannot explain it. The anointing that flows from secret prayer is weighty. It carries a peace that silences storms. Many people desire public reward without private discipline. They want divine provision without hidden obedience. But the spiritual law remains unbroken. The Father who sees in secret rewards openly. Every answered prayer, every sudden breakthrough, every miracle that shocks the world has its roots in secret communion. When you close your door and lift your voice to the unseen God, you are not ignored. The silence of the secret chamber is not empty. It is filled with divine attention. Every whisper of faith is heard. Every tear is counted. Every sigh of surrender is recorded in heaven's book. The secret place is the true courtroom of destiny, where divine transactions are made. In the secret chamber, you are stripped of all performance. There are no titles, no applause, no audience. Only the Creator and the created. It is there that you confront your own heart, the hidden fears, the pride, the doubt. They rise to the surface in the presence of divine light. And as you yield them, transformation begins. The secret place becomes a furnace where the impurities of the soul are burned away, leaving only faith that is pure and strong. The person who prays in secret emerges not just with answers, but with a new nature. Their words begin to carry weight because their heart has been tested in fire. The secret chamber is also the place of divine exchange. You bring your weakness, and God gives you strength. You bring your confusion, and He gives you clarity. You bring your lack, and He gives you supply. You bring your brokenness, and He gives you wholeness. These exchanges do not happen in the noise of life, but in the quiet moments of surrender. The more you visit the secret chamber, the more you learn that true power is birthed in surrender, not striving. The presence of God is not found in the crowded marketplace of noise, but in the quiet altar of devotion. When you pray in secret, your prayers become sharper, more targeted, more accurate. You begin to sense divine timing. You no longer waste words on things that are outside of God's plan. You pray according to revelation, not reaction. The Holy Spirit becomes your guide, and you begin to intercede in harmony with heaven's agenda. That is why prayers from the secret place produce quick results. They are aligned, not scattered. They are born out of communion, not desperation. In that chamber, you learn to speak from the Spirit, not from emotion. You learn to decree rather than to complain. You learn to wait rather than to rush. The secret chamber shapes your language into the dialect of heaven. Secrecy also guards your faith from contamination. When you share too much too soon, you expose the seed of faith to doubt and opinion. The secret chamber principle teaches you the discipline of silence. Not every revelation is meant to be spoken immediately. Some things must grow in silence before they are seen in power. God hides certain promises in the soil of secrecy until they mature. When you keep your prayer secret, you protect it from unbelief. Others may not understand what you are believing for, and their words can interfere with your own confidence. The secret chamber keeps the seed of faith safe until the time of manifestation. The hidden place is not lonely, it is alive with divine companionship. When you enter that sacred space, you realize you are never truly alone. You begin to feel the nearness of God as tangible presence. His peace fills your being, His joy renews your strength, His wisdom illuminates your thoughts. Time loses meaning. You become aware that eternity has entered your moment. That awareness changes how you live. You carry that peace with you even after you leave the secret place. People notice it without knowing why. They sense the fragrance of divine intimacy. The secret chamber principle is also a test of sincerity. In the open, anyone can appear spiritual, but in the hidden place, only the genuine remains. When no one is watching, your love for God is tested. Do you still pray when no one applauds? Do you still worship when no one hears? Do you still give when no one sees? The Father watches such moments with joy because they reveal the purity of devotion. It is in the unseen obedience that your reward is prepared. The hidden offering, the unspoken gratitude, the quiet intercession. These are the treasures that move heaven. In that chamber, the believer learns to depend on presence rather than outcome. You stop chasing results and start cherishing relationship. You begin to understand that being with God is the greatest reward of all. Miracles, blessings, and provisions flow naturally from that relationship, but they are no longer the focus. The focus is Him, His voice, His will, His glory. That shift transforms your spiritual life completely. When you come out of the secret chamber, you are not anxious about what you prayed for. You are at peace because you know the one who holds the outcome. That peace becomes your shield against doubt and fear. The world may celebrate noise, but the kingdom celebrates stillness. In silence, heaven speaks. In secrecy, power grows. The greatest miracles are conceived in invisible moments. What looks like stillness to others is preparation to God. Every time you close your door and whisper His name, you are building an altar of intimacy that the world cannot see. The more consistent you are in that secret fellowship, the stronger your spirit becomes. You carry the presence into your daily life like a hidden fire that cannot be quenched. The manifestation of divine supply is the moment when invisible faith becomes visible provision. It is the transition point where prayer turns into reality, where what was once believed in the heart is seen by the eyes. Divine supply does not come through striving or human manipulation. It flows through alignment with the laws of heaven. When the believer understands how divine supply operates, they stop chasing after things and start attracting them through spiritual order. The manifestation of divine supply is not magic. It is the natural consequence of spiritual alignment. God's economy does not function like the world's economy. While the world depends on competition and scarcity, heaven functions by generosity and abundance. When the Spirit aligns with this divine order, supply begins to manifest effortlessly because the believer has entered the current of heaven's flow. Every need in life already has a corresponding supply prepared in the spiritual realm. Before the problem appeared, the provision existed. The delay between asking and receiving is often the process of alignment, not the absence of blessing. Divine supply cannot be forced. It must be received. To manifest provision, one must first believe that it is already done. Faith is the invisible bridge between the promise and its manifestation. When your heart and your words stand in agreement with what God has already provided, that invisible supply begins to take form. It can appear as opportunity, as favor, as an unexpected connection, or as sudden breakthrough. The channel through which it comes may vary, but the source is always the same. The hand of God releases what the heart of faith expects. The manifestation of divine supply begins with recognition. You cannot receive what you do not recognize. Many pray for provision while ignoring the seeds already in their possession. Divine supply rarely comes fully formed. It often comes as a seed, an idea, or a small beginning. Those who know how to discern these small beginnings unlock great abundance. The widow with the oil did not realize her miracle was already in her house. The disciples did not realize the boy's 5 loaves and 2 fish were the seed of multiplication. Recognition turns little into much. When you thank God for what you already have, you release His power to multiply it. Gratitude is the magnet of divine supply. Divine supply also operates by order. God does not release abundance into disorder. When there is confusion, fear, or unbelief, the flow becomes obstructed. The believer must set divine order in their thoughts, their motives, and their priorities. When your life is aligned with purpose, supply flows to sustain that purpose. Heaven never funds confusion, it funds vision. Provision follows purpose. That is why the moment you understand what you are called to do, resources begin to appear. The law of divine order ensures that supply never arrives before readiness. God will not pour new wine into old wineskins. The preparation of character is part of the manifestation process. Once the heart is ready to steward the blessing, the doors of supply open with ease. Divine supply is not limited by human systems. It does not depend on the economy, geography, or the favor of people. It transcends the boundaries of natural limitation. God can use a raven, a stranger, or even your enemy to deliver what is meant for you. When faith is active, divine supply will find its way through any channel necessary. That is why it is important never to limit how God can move. The moment you dictate the method, you reduce the miracle. Divine supply is creative. It manifests in unexpected forms. What looks like a setback may be a hidden setup for provision. Sometimes God hides your blessing in what looks like trouble, so that it is protected from the hands of men until the appointed time. The manifestation of divine supply follows spiritual principles similar to the law of sowing and reaping. Giving opens the channel through which supply flows. When you release what is in your hand, you make room for what is in God's hand. The river that does not flow becomes stagnant. In the same way, provision that is not circulated ceases to multiply. Divine supply flows through those who become conduits, not containers. The more you release, the more heaven trusts you with. Generosity is the key that keeps the supply chain of heaven active. When your motive for receiving is pure and your intention is to bless others, the supply becomes limitless. God cannot resist a vessel that mirrors His giving nature. Faith plays the role of spiritual currency in the economy of heaven. Without faith, the transaction cannot occur. Faith is the authorization that allows divine supply to transfer from the unseen to the seen. When you believe that the promise is already fulfilled, you activate the divine logistics system. Angels, circumstances, and people begin to align to deliver what is yours. Your confession becomes the delivery signal. When your words agree with the promise, heaven confirms the order. When your words contradict it, the delivery is delayed. This is why speaking faith is essential to manifestation. Words create the environment where supply materializes. There is also timing in divine manifestation. God releases supply according to seasons. Just as a farmer does not harvest before the crop matures, God waits until the blessing will serve its highest purpose. What may seem like delay is often protection. Divine timing ensures that what you receive will not destroy you but develop you. Patience becomes a spiritual weapon in this process. Those who wait in faith keep the atmosphere open for manifestation. Impatience closes it. The heart that is at rest in divine timing creates an environment of peace that attracts provision naturally. When divine supply begins to manifest, it often comes with signs. Peace is the first sign. Before the provision appears, peace arrives. That peace is the witness of heaven saying the transaction is complete. After peace, opportunities begin to open. You meet the right people. Ideas flow easily, and what was once difficult becomes effortless. You sense a divine ease. This is the flow of grace. In the realm of divine supply, effort still exists, but it is no longer heavy, it becomes joyful. Work becomes worship, and productivity becomes partnership with God. The manifestation of divine supply also carries responsibility. Every provision carries purpose. When you receive from heaven, it is never just for personal comfort, it is for kingdom expansion. The one who uses divine resources for divine purposes will never lack. The more you align your provision with purpose, the more heaven multiplies your capacity. That is why divine wealth is different from worldly wealth. It does not enslave, it empowers. It does not corrupt, it restores. The purpose of divine supply is always to reveal God's goodness on the earth. When your heart remains anchored in that truth, abundance becomes your natural environment. There is a rhythm in divine supply. It flows through cycles of giving, receiving, and thanksgiving. Each stage fuels the next. Giving releases faith. Receiving manifests grace. Thanksgiving multiplies both. The moment gratitude rises, the flow increases. Complaining blocks it. The heart that complains closes the gate of abundance. But the heart that continually gives thanks remains open to the endless stream of divine goodness. That is why gratitude must become your default state. It keeps you synchronized with the rhythm of divine flow. Sometimes divine supply manifests in ways that test faith. God may ask you to release what you think you cannot spare. He may lead you to bless another, even when your own need seems great. Those moments are divine tests of trust. When you obey, the heavens respond instantly. The supply you release returns multiplied, not because of a transaction, but because obedience unlocks overflow. Every act of obedience creates a spiritual vacuum that heaven rushes to fill. In that way, your life becomes a continuous cycle of supernatural provision. To live in the manifestation of divine supply is to walk in constant awareness that you are connected to an infinite source. It is to know that lack is an illusion and that every need is already met in divine wisdom. The more this awareness grows, the less fear has power. Worry fades because you realize that supply is not something you chase. It is something you manifest through faith and alignment. Divine supply is not stored somewhere far away. It is within reach, waiting for your consciousness to agree with heaven's abundance. When that agreement happens, the invisible becomes visible, and what you once prayed for becomes the reality you now live in.